Oh my gosh, people, what happened to me that I do remember is still blows me away. So at first, I could hear a woman's voice to my left saying, I'm not getting a pulse, I'm not getting a pulse. This nurse was not perceiving any breath coming from me. I found myself in another environment. I was told, you're going to be sent back. And it was like, are you crazy? I mean, it was like, no. I argued with God. I was told that if I chose to live, this is what I would be doing. And I was shown an image of me. I felt like I was remembering. I was told it would be okay, basically. It would all make sense when everything became obvious. And it became obvious when I found the shoe. It was a full download. It was just everything just whomped in. It was breathtaking.
The A.J. Parr Spiritual Journalist Podcast.
We're here with Kimberly Clark Sharp. She had an amazing NDE, and she is also the founder of the oldest IANDS group, the International Association for Near-Death Studies in the world. It's the Seattle IANDS. Hello, Kimberly. How are you? Welcome.
I'm good.
What can you tell us about your NDE?
Hi, AJ. Well, let's see. The day I died, there was a day, and I did die. I was actually pronounced dead twice because I guess I'm stubborn and needed to have it really validated. But what happened? May 25th, 1970, I was a college student in the state of Kansas, where I am from, and wanted to get a driver's license. I'd had one a few years earlier, but didn't need to drive in college, but I was going to graduate soon. So I went back home. My dad took me to the Department of Motor Vehicles in Shawnee Mission, Kansas, for those who care. That was the location of where I up and died. I have to share my dad's perspective first because I was not on this plane of existence, for lack of a better word. But according to my father, I did not pass the driver's test. I couldn't parallel park my car. So we're going to have to come back again. I don't remember that. I signed all of the paperwork correctly. I don't remember that. We were leaving the building when my dad noticed my complexion was what he called white on white, and then I collapsed. He tried to catch me, but dead weight, which is kind of a pun, but dead weight's heavier than a live weight. He couldn't hold me, and I wound up propelling both of us to the sidewalk. He didn't fall. I did. I was on the sidewalk. There happened to be a uniformed nurse passing by. What are the odds? I think I was meant to live. In fact, I want to interrupt myself and tell you that I did write a book, and the original title was The Woman Who Would Not Die, because I tell you, I keep trying to get there and I keep not getting there. So, but this was my first foray into the wonderful world of, oh, there's much more going on than we know. So physically what happened is that this nurse did come over, decided I didn't have a pulse or respiration. 2 phone calls were made, one to the Shawnee Mission Department of Volunteer Firefighters, one to a place called St. Luke's Medical Center in Kansas City, Missouri, the closest hospital to my body. Fire department arrived first. According again to my dad, it was new packaging for a portable ventilator. Again, this nurse was not perceiving any breath coming from me. Fire department arrived. They agreed with her. They slapped on portable ventilator. According to my dad, again, made sure the seal was tight and turned it on. But this new ventilator had 2 functions. One was to, of course, put air into the body, which is what you want. But the other function was vacuum mode in case something was blocking the airway. Like, that's why we tell our children, don't run with candy in your mouth, choking. In fact, for adults in a restaurant, if it's food, it's actually called cafe coronary. That is the word. Anyway, sometimes first responders have to clear an airway. But my airway was clear. So in vacuum mode, whatever oxygen was left in my body seemed to have gotten sucked out. Got the life sucked out of me. I must be in a funny mood today because I'm thinking of all these odd things like that. Sucked the life out of me, indeed. They knew immediately what happened. They tried to bring me back around. It didn't work. They turned to my dad and said, I'm so sorry. We're not getting a thing. A man came out of now a pretty robust crowd around the body. And my dad said he pushed everyone aside, including the firefighters. He just plucked them off. And he did mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, chest compressions, and then he gave up. He was a swearing man, apparently. So our joke has been, he wasn't from Kansas. And for those of you who know the Midwest of the United States, it's a very conservative part of the country. Anyway, that's pretty much all my dad remembers. At some point, the ambulance did arrive, body thrown into the back of the vehicle. He jumped in with the body, my body. Off we went to the hospital in the emergency room. Apparently, things went poorly for a bit, but it all turned out okay. We're having this conversation. I'm alive, in case there's any doubt. But oh my gosh, people, what happened to me that I do remember is still blows me away. So at first, I could hear a woman's voice to my left saying, I'm not getting a pulse. I'm not getting a pulse. She was so darn agitated. So I tried to calm her down. Like, of course you're getting a pulse. Otherwise, I wouldn't be speaking. Kind of patronizing on my part, but I felt like, what kind of a nutcase is she? Anyway, I finally thought if you're going to ignore me, I'm going to ignore you, and I just let go. And I don't know how to define that letting go, but it is essential. I know that. I found myself in another environment. It was kind of balmy warm. I was surrounded by dense, foggy material, and I felt like I was supposed to be there. I also did not feel like I was alone, but I couldn't see who or what I was with because of the fog. But it was a natural experience. I had such confidence that this was where I was supposed to be at that time. I have said in other occasions that I had the same confidence as one would at the gate at the airport. You got your boarding pass, you're just waiting for your, it was like that. It was fine. Then the hardest part to explain is that a light blasted up under me with a power, which a force that is incomparable on the planet. Closest I've come is standing behind Niagara Falls, all that thundering. It was like, oh, this is good. But it was unearthly. Everything about it was unearthly anyway, my whole experience. But this light was nothing but love. It was personal. I mean, it was like directed to me. And it went out in all directions. And at the same time, it was layering endlessly on itself. And I said, homie home. I do remember that so well because later, upon recovery, my parents said, homie home were the words I used when I was a toddler and learning language. And we'd been away from the house, but we're driving back home from grandma or grandpa's or whatever. And I would recognize my street and go, homie home, homie home. Yeah, it was one of those Gucci goo moments for, a parent. I don't remember that. My mom and dad do remember. So that was validating, actually. I said homie home. I somehow knew that I was beholding eternity in this light. And this light is what I think anyone would call God. But that's just three little letters in English, and it's completely inadequate. It just, but we all can agree on the concept, on the definition of God or a God or whatever. I'm more comfortable talking about my creator and homie home. It's from whence I came, no question. So then I just was surrounded by so much love. So much information coming in, all good. I was asking questions. The communication was perfect, but it was in math and music. Explain that. And I don't have skills in math or music, by the way. I mean, in church, I'm asked to lip sync hymns. It's bad. And math, forget about it. But yet, that was definitely the communication. I could ask questions, like, "Well, why are we born then?" I'm just pulling this out of my brain right now, by the way. But it was, basically you banged on the door to get born and you made a very careful decision. It's like, oh yeah. But I didn't feel like I was learning anything. I felt like I was remembering everything. It was like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. It was good. Then I heard something I did not want to hear. No one would in that circumstance, by the way, and that's that I had to go back. I was told you're going to be sent back. And it was like, if I may paraphrase myself, are you crazy? I mean, it was like, no. It was like, I just got here. I was like, no. I had a vested interest in no. I argued with God, for lack of a better word, for creator God, Heavenly Father, whatever, mother, I mean, flow. I assign God a feminine gender on occasion, call her flow when it's synchronicity. Doesn't matter. I argued with that energy and said no. And it was yes, no, yeah. I mean, I'm here to tell you, you can argue with God. Again, though, I wound up being sent back anyway. But I missed my body. And the first thing I noticed was I missed my physical body by about the same distance as I missed the curb in my car trying to parallel park. And the first thing I remember saying to myself was, I can't even park myself. I mean, it wasn't like a high self-esteem moment for me, by the way. Anyway, I didn't have any anxiety that I recall, but I thought I looked weird. And then I saw someone I didn't recognize. And I'm looking this direction like I'm back in the moment. Oh, and there's my body, but I'm here. But I saw a man bend over me, and the moment his mouth touched mine, which is where he was aiming, I went back into my body. But I went back through him. I didn't make a lateral move. I went through my second responder and knew everything about the guy, frankly, emotionally. Part of him felt like he had made a big mistake by jumping forward. He was concerned for me, but then I struck what I had responded to. He had compassion for me. He was a stranger, but he had compassion. I had just been with the greatest love of all. Compassion is a very powerful form of love. I realized I was attracted to that. His love for me. It was wonderful. And going through him was just fine, but being back in my body, not so fine. I didn't like it at all. It was dark and clammy. Did I mention dark? It was icky. It was cold. By the way, my admitting body temperature to the hospital was 86 degrees. I mean, we function at like 98 point whatever, 7 or something. So yeah, I was cold. My body was headed for the morgue. I mean, yeah. So anyway, I didn't like it, and I couldn't get out of it. I felt like I was running around in my body in the dark, in the cold, miserable. So I called out to God and just get me out of here. I mean, I meant it with my whole heart, and my whole heart was heard, and God pulled me out of there. And now we're back. It's like, oh, hi. And to my right, there was like a window or a portal or something. And through there was my heaven. And it was, oh, it was so beautiful. It was, it was so beautiful. It was waving blades of grass, like in a meadow off to the horizon, small white fence, kind of small trees way off in the distance. But the colors were not earthly. There was a clue. The grass was green, but of an intensity that doesn't exist on Earth at all. The sky was blue, but it wasn't just blue, it was blue. You'd have to scream it. Super saturation of colors. And I also somehow could perceive every blade of grass. And there were countless blades of grass, but it's like they had awareness. They had some, for lack of a better word, some consciousness. How interesting. Here I go. But as I was headed, I was told that if I crossed that border, I wouldn't be coming back. So it's like, okay, got it. And then off I went. Then there was this flash of light. And within it, I was told if I chose to live, that's where I would be living. And it was where mountains met water. It wasn't Kansas, but I didn't know where it was. I didn't care. I'm going to heaven. Thank you. And off I go. And then another flash. And within it was like a gallery of people with captions that I could read. The first one was best friend. And it kind of went down the line. And I was told that if I chose to live, these are people that would be significant for them and me in my future. They were strangers. What did I care? I'm going to heaven. And I felt like I was so close. And then there was another flash of light. And I was told that if I chose to live, this is what I would be doing, giving service. And I was shown an image of me giving service to others. I hadn't thought about that in my whole life. I I I think I was like a nice person, but I didn't give service to anybody. And I said, cool. And then I was back. And that is the end of my near-death experience. Other than when I was exiting, there was like almost signage and a voice that said that I would forget everything except as it would be manifest. Well, that's not fair. And I had to look up manifest, and it meant obvious. But I didn't do any of this research immediately. I had to live first. So there was some recovery to be had, but I did recover. As it turns out, got to the hospital and I pulled my emergency room notes when I was writing a book. I wrote a book, but interesting hospital notes because basically it was like it's a in terms of why did I collapse? Why wasn't I breathing? Why? And it was like cardiac question mark, simple faint question mark, drop in blood pressure question mark, but probably the snafu with the ventilator. And I thought, oh my gosh, death by snafu. Am I the only one in the world? Like, holy cow. Anyway, that was my cause of death. What happened was suffocation, and that's how I died. But I did survive again because we're having this conversation. And then I had to sort it out. And there was no sorting. I remember being on my grandfather's lap, sobbing my brains out. I couldn't find words. Um, I felt like I was different and I felt like I was suffocating again, but this time my lifestyle. I had planned to marry a little boy I met in the seventh grade called Robert Clark because we had the same last name. And then I could still be Kim Clark, my maiden name. It was like perfect. Wouldn't have to change the monograms on the towels. What a plan. And he was in it. He was fine. We were going to get married. It was great. We'd known each other for a long time. And I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't live at home anymore. I graduated from college, bought a Volkswagen Squareback. I had a hamster named Toto. Here comes a joke, by the way. I had a hamster named Toto, kept Toto in a bird cage. So Toto went on the passenger side of my car. So we're driving along, and the overreaching joke here is that I'm coming from Kansas. I'm traveling with Toto. As we are approaching Interstate 70, at that time you had to pay to use the road. It went east-west. I'm lurching up with Toto, knowing that I'm getting to a decision, and I decided I didn't want to make that decision. This was all wrong. I hated change. I didn't want change. I was saying out loud, no, no, I take me back. I mean, no, I'm not. I just went, cried, cried, cried. The kind of cry where there's a lot of mucus, I might add. And I just kept saying, I don't want to change. I don't want to change. I hate change. And then we approached the toll booth, and there was a big sign that said, change needed. It was like, oh, funny. Ha, ha, ha. And then I said, okay, then I need some Kleenex. This is the bratty Kim. I'm a brat with God to this day. So like, I looked down, and probably my mom put the box there, but there was this white box, black letters that said Kimberly Clark. That's my name. And it's Kleenex because Kimberly Clark makes Kleenex. I'm not that person or people. It was actually two men. But anyway, thank you, blah, blah, blah. So then we head west. Toto and me were crossing Kansas. There was a wee tornado. We had to take cover. But that meant I spent the night with a college friend. She decided she was going to go with me and did. And off we went with many adventures looking for where mountains met water. Now, in writing the book, After the Light, I wanted to talk to everyone I was going to write about, and that included Mary Sue Bolick, who was my travel companion at that time. Again, 55 years ago. I hired a detective to find some of the people because I knew how my stories by then were slashed, retold, messed up, wrung out, misrepresented. I didn't want to do that. And Mary Sue Bolick was found, and I told her I was writing a book. It's a crazy thing. I'd had a near-death experience, but it wasn't coined yet. Anyway, she finally shushed me and said, Kim, you did tell me. I have no memory of that. She said it took you a couple of weeks on the road, but you were getting it out. I mean, you were talking about it. Like, really? Anyway, um, we kept looking for where mountains met water. So she did have that much information, but couldn't find it in stop after stop after stop, which would be like the Denver area, Colorado Mountain area. Salt Lake City, I really thought that was going to be it. Lake Tahoe, sure, that was it. San Francisco, that was it. I became a hippie by then, and I enjoyed living on Haight Street with the irony that I was so filled with love, and I lived on a street named Haight. I loved the hippie community, loved it, loved it. They understood me, peace, love, new near-death experiencer. I wanted to love everybody. Let's go sing barefoot in the park. Yeah. I mean, it was really wonderful. And then it wasn't. Then it was time to go. Things did change on the hippie scene in San Francisco, and Mary Sue Bolick's still with me. We went north. And the moment I crossed the city limit sign of Seattle, I was like, oh, it was like, finally. But there was a big billboard that said, well, the last person leaving Seattle, please turn out the lights. Seattle economy had crashed because Boeing Company had crashed. And I'm pulling into town going, I'm here. I know I'm supposed to be here. Make way, honk, honk. This is my life. And it was. It was. So, but the problem was I hadn't made sense of much. Uh, I have said about myself before, I have said that I forgot. And I can still say that because I forgot the whole of it. But there were pieces. My metaphor on occasion has been, my life was a jigsaw puzzle. There's mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, younger siblings, school, Robert Clark. I mean, all these things were in place. And then with my near-death experience, what we're calling that now, everything went airborne, all the pieces, and they fell back down in a pattern I couldn't make sense of. So I was just trying to put the pieces together, connect the dots, if you will, but it made no sense. And then it got worse because I should add, to this day, I've never applied for a job, but yet I've had great jobs. I've had a wonderful career. I've never had to do anything. Graduate school, I was asked to apply. Jobs, I've been asked to apply. The work's been hard within, but I became a social worker. I wound up uh, University of Washington graduate school, and that led me to an internship in a place called Harborview Medical Center on the intensive care unit and coronary care unit. Harborview then, as now, serves a land mass of 1/4 of the United States. It's a huge trauma center in Seattle and part of the University of Washington. So did my internship, then got a job, which was, just wonderful. But in the process, now I had my degree. I was an MSW, and I decided I was crazy. I thought, okay, I'm a highly functioning schizophrenic because honestly, things were weird. I was having visions. I was scary things, what we call angels, way too many dead people. I mean, it's like, what? Out of body experiences, lucid dreams, but none of these had labels or none of it made sense except as, oh, schizophrenia. But I wasn't going to tell anyone. And it was so bad. At one point, I had to go through the emergency room to get to my job, which was on the second floor, north end of the building. Key that I mentioned that, by the way. Anyway, I had to go through the emergency room to get to my office on the first floor or my patients on the second floor. And there was a woman who looked a lot like me as I was going through the emergency room, sitting on a gurney in 2-point restraints, which are the wrists, looking miserable. And it caught my attention. And I said to the ER, what's her story? I went to the ER doc, one of them, like, what's her deal? And he just, said, oh, she feels like she's going in and out of her body. So we're sitting upstairs to the fifth floor. Well, the fifth floor was locked down psych. I thought, oh, I'm going in and out of my body on occasion. This just confirms I'm crazy. But dang, I'm good with my patients because this was about death and dying. Been there. I was confident. I was really, really good as a social worker, really good, because I had an inside edge. I could see invisibilities around patients, around doctors, around families, around me. It was interesting, to say the least. Then one day, oh, bring your chairs in closer, dear listeners, because I'm going to tell you the story right now. A woman by the name of Maria. English was not her first language at all. Actually, she was a migrant worker from Eastern Washington. And I needed to be the social worker, find a translator. She was admitted the night before I came on duty of a given day. And she needed money. She needed to find her family, all the social work stuff. So I went and did my write-up with the translator. My Spanish was, barely high school, barely, and that had been a while earlier. So fine. It was just, routine. Then later that day, I was paged back to the coronary care unit, and it was because Maria had been really agitated. It seems that earlier in the day, and I knew this, but I wasn't thinking about it. Earlier in the day, she had gone into cardiac arrest, and I was on the floor. And at Harborview, because it's a teaching hospital, you don't get a doctor, a nurse, and a respiratory therapist. You get what, we call the thundering herds. So there's intern, resident, attending, students, visiting doctors, the nurse, student nurses, visiting nurses, respiratory therapists, student respiratory therapists. The room gets packed. Again, teaching hospital. But I was in the doorway and I watched Maria, pretty easy resuscitation. I didn't think here nor there about it. And then I went about my business. That was routine at Harborview. That wasn't an anomaly at all. It was just my job. But I did get paged back up later in the day because Marie was agitated and the nurse thought that she might flip back into cardiac arrest. And they could not find the translator. So I went in and Maria was agitated but not unhappy, but she was pretty excited. And I'm going to tell you in my words because this was a long interview. We got it done, but she said during her resuscitation, and I'm really condensing and paraphrasing. I have to be honest to her. Um, she said first she saw, everything from a corner of the room, like she's showing me where it was. And yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I didn't believe her. Isn't that bad? I, sorry, Maria, I didn't. She was talking to the best and the worst person in the world. Best because actually it had this kind of experience. Worse because I already decided I was crazy. But I also had done a workup on Maria. She was not crazy. That woman was sane. I knew that myself. So what the heck? I didn't want to deal with it. And then she said like that without even motating, without even a sense of movement. She found herself outside of the window looking down on the emergency room driveway, correctly identified it. Again, I'm going, yeah, skeptical. Her room's above the emergency room. Maybe someone from housekeeping pushed her bed by the window to clean, which was not ever going to happen. The woman was on so many wires and tubes, and no one comes in and disconnects a person on coronary care to clean, but whatever. And then she said she was distracted, zipping around by a shoe. It was dark blue. It was grande. It was large. The little toe was scuffed, and there was a white shoelace under the heel. She didn't know where, though she had no sense of place, but she felt like she was 3 or 4 stories above the ground, but still around the hospital. And she was all worked up because she wanted someone to get the shoe because she knew it was there. It's like, I don't want to be that person. But again, I was a good social worker, young social worker. So, okay, I will. I went outside. I wasn't helping for various reasons. And then I went inside and, you know, I have a strong Celtic background, by the way, so luck of the Scottish and Irish or whatever. I started out on the wrong side of the hospital inside, but the floor I started on was the third floor, and they were all my patients anyway, because that's where coronary care spilled when the person was out of danger, but not out of the hospital. So I knew everyone. It wasn't a big deal to go, excuse me, I need to look out your window. And then I got around to the west side of the building. It was one of the rooms where no one was there, but there was a cart, which happened with other rooms, uh, 2 levels, metal holding towels and just stuff. That was sort of in the way. So I went into an empty room and then looked beyond the cart, and there was the shoe. It was a man's shoe. I went into shock. It was shocking because it was there. I mean, and for what, why is a shoe on a ledge? There's a question to be had. I could not bear my own body weight. I began to frantically decide why this wasn't happening. My mind was racing with skeptical responses that really didn't make sense. Like, oh, Maria was a bird? Yeah, no. Anyway, I lost my ability to support my own body weight and I bonked my head against the glass. And out loud, I said, this happened to me. And I could see my breath fogging the glass momentarily. And that's when it all fell into place. All those puzzle pieces just went, click, 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 click. It's like, aha, I didn't know what I had, but I had something and I knew it. So I picked up the shoe. There have been other renditions of this story, including me crawling out on a ledge, hands and knees, and then going around the corner. And yeah, I didn't do that. Besides which, I was young, cute, wore mini skirts. I was not going to be flashing the city of Seattle. It wasn't called Harborview for nothing. It looms over downtown. No, I just opened the window, opened this way, and I reached out and got it.
When you picked up that shoe in your book, you mentioned that it all came to you, and that's when you remembered what God told you when you ended your first near-death
And
experience. Can you describe that?
ironically, the one part I usually forget about sharing when I talk about my near-death experience is the part about when I was leaving, and it was like there was almost a sign above the door and a voice, um, a woman's voice or a man's voice. I'm not sure about that, to be honest. But it was, I would forget everything except as it would be manifest. And I didn't know what manifest meant as a word. I looked it up in the dictionary. And in this sense, it was like obvious. So, in other words, I was told it would be okay. Basically, it would all make sense when everything became obvious. And it became obvious when I found the shoe. And that's why I could not support my own body weight. It was a full download. We have that word now that didn't exist then. It was just everything just whomped in. It was breathtaking. And again, it didn't change anything. It changed everything. It changed everything. Everything in my life. I became stronger as a social worker, stronger as an advocate, stronger in helping people validate, stronger in love, as a matter of fact, because then I knew I had a shoe. Went back to Maria's room with the shoe behind my back. I don't know why. My last vestige of skepticism, I guess, and said, "Can you tell me about the inside of the shoe?" And she said, no, she couldn't. Still no translator, of course. So I pulled this shoe out behind my back and remembered some Spanish. Viva Zapata. Behold the shoe. It was really, it was really neat. It was really cool. And then the nurse came. And this story was not spread by Maria or me. It was spread by the nursing department. And by the way, Maria gave me the shoe. And I had the shoe for the longest time. And it is in a film from a whole bunch of years ago out of England. Otherwise, the shoe, I've said it's somewhere in my garage. You want to clean out our 900 square foot garage? Have at it. But I can't say that with confidence much anymore. But people kept saying, well, if you show me the shoe, then I'll believe. Well, that didn't happen because after that it was, well, you could have gotten that shoe anywhere. So, if I lecture, I'll just pull off the shoe I'm wearing, high heel, whatever, and go, this was the shoe I found. And now I wear it when I travel. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I was the advocate. Maria was the experiencer at that point. I was her advocate. You best be believing me, people. I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about my patient who was sane and speaking the truth with a capital T and proved it. We were guided, I guess, to be together. I don't know. I have a lot of questions when I do die, like what the heck? But that the humble shoe made the difference. Now, since then, I've heard many variations of this story. Again, me crawling out on the ledge. No, I didn't do that. That it was a doctor who found a black shoe on a hospital roof. I was actually in the audience when someone gave that lecture. Not that long ago, my friend. And I was sitting there, and then he's got this PowerPoint. He's got a picture of the shoe. And I'm going, oh, I didn't even have that. And he's talking about this doctor that found a black shoe on a ledge and never mentioned the hospital or the location or anything. Of course, those in the room, because this was at a conference on the subject, turned to me who knew that story, like, what is Kim going to say about this? And I just sat there going, oh my gosh. So we had a talk afterwards and we clarified that. And then there's been like a red shoe on a ledge found by a nurse. But the only people associated with the tennis shoe would be, I don't know, let's see, me. But then, as she became more famous and media came around and they wanted to talk to, nurses or people who were there and worked their way up to the attending physician who then they disparaged. They, meaning media at that time, not now. I haven't heard a skeptical response in quite a while. And happily, I was always believed at my teaching hospitals, no one ever questioned me. Well, for one, we had the shoe, but it was like, but anyway, the attending physician then said, I am not going to do this ever again. Because then they said, oh, and he's just covering up for Kim. And Kim's just covering up for the patient. And it was just like, ugh. So at that point, I thought, this is on everyone else. It's not on Maria. It's not on me. It's not on the physicians or the nurses or Maria or anything. It's just like, whatever. Um, I was there and much good has come of it as a result. And by the way, too, back then people weren't discharged as quickly as they are now. This wasn't a flash in the pan relationship, Maria and me. She was in the hospital for 3 weeks before she discharged. The shoe was the Shroud of Turin. I mean, word began to spread. People came to behold the shoe. This wasn't a secret. And then she discharged, but I followed her as an outpatient for 3 years. So this was a long relationship. And then in summer of 1980, I went backpacking around Europe, gave my caseload to one of my graduate students until I got back, came back, and Maria was missing and remained missing. I never saw her again. I don't know what happened to her. She did have bad heart disease, and anyway, but I bless her because this story is just massively important. And it allowed me to go, oh, wait, academic setting. I needed a research gig badly. I was ambitious. I wanted to get promoted through the academic system. So everything I thought to research was boring, and now I had this. So I thought, So I thought, all right, there's Maria and there's me. There's two of us. I'll bet there's more. And I was in the perfect place to find out. So then, thereafter, everyone who needed resuscitation on 2 North heard from me. I mean, I was a social worker anyway, but I would say, like, so what do you remember during your resuscitation? Yeah, taking my notes. It was nothing. And that went on until June. So we're going April to June, and I'll get nothing from a lot of people who were resuscitated until on the intensive care unit, medical intensive care unit, a 16-year-old had been admitted, suicide attempt, overdose, normally would go to Children's Hospital. She was too ongoing resuscitation to go that far. They admitted her. She lived. I was doing my workup and I asked her the question I had been asking, by then kind of almost not bored, but routinely. So what do you remember about, your resuscitation? I'm like, gee, I need to file that nail. I really wasn't as fully present as I should have been. And she said, oh yeah, I saw my oompa. And I was like, what? What? Apparently, oompa was what she called her grandpa when she was little. She couldn't say the word grandpa. It was oompa. And then she just kept calling him that. The man was dead. And so was this gal, by the way. She found herself on her grandfather's lap, being held like she was little, and being comforted, and then being scolded. And she was told, I changed her first name in the book. Her first name really is Patty, but I called her Penny. Um, but he said, you got to go back. This is, he was stern, firm, loving, insistent. You got to go back. You got to take care of this. Turns out she had overdosed because of a boy. Wah, wah, that not a good move. Again, I follow my patients and a 16-year-old who was with her oompa. So now there's 3 of us really encouraged me. And again, with Maria, I followed this gal into inpatient medicine, and then across the street was a psych unit. I followed her there. I mean, again, I followed her through so much. She fully recovered. She needed a lot of mental health intervention, but after a while, she did recover mentally, physically, the whole schmear. And I used to take her around to area high schools, and she would have an assembly that she would address, and she would talk to kids as a kid, don't try to hurt yourself. And she was very honest. It was over a boy. That was ridiculous. My whole life was ahead. Don't be desperate. Get some help. I mean, she was really, really effective because she was their age. And that worked for a while. Then she aged out of it. And, life happened. She married, had a baby, and then I lost track of her. So, and she was one of two people I wrote about I never did find. That's why I changed her first name in case she read the book and went, oh, wait, that was me. I haven't heard from her. But that story set it off, and that set the research. And then along came Raymond Moody's book. Oh, I think I'll read that. Oh, near-death experience. By golly, now we have some words. In the meantime, I have my own group of people in the coronary care unit who have had what we now call a near-death experience. I was already in my research. So I was welcomed into IANDS with open arms because of the tennis shoe, basically. It was just, and Raymond Moody heard about the shoe, and Kenneth Ring and Bruce Grayson, these people that became very good friends, but researchers and the founders of IANDS. And then um, one thing led to another, and skipping over information like, oh, I had this idea in a bar because I did. I was sitting on a bar stool next to Kenneth Ring, who's one of the founders of the International Association for Near-Death Studies, which is the acronym for IANDS. Should have mentioned that before now, by the way, but there you go. Such a long name. But Ken and I were sitting on a bar stool, actually waiting for dinner at a Red Robin. And that's when the whole idea about groups came up. And the person he was also there to see, named Betty Preston, a amazing near-death experiencer. So Betty and I started Seattle IANDS in June of 1982, and there were four of us in Betty's living room, four women, and we shared our stories. The next time we met was in a couple months, and there were 25 people, and we hadn't done anything. It was just word was getting out, and on it went. So since June of 1982, we have met monthly. Since the pandemic, we went on Zoom during the pandemic through IANDS. We didn't skip a beat, met at the same second Saturdays we always do. Now we are taking December's off because it's a dark and cold month in Seattle, and what the heck. So, but otherwise, we've kept it up. Someone years ago figured that at that time there were about 10,000 people that had come through the door for Seattle IANDS. We have sign-up sheets, but that's not 10,000 separate people. That's just looking at the sign-up sheets. But if you look back to 1982, it's been a while, so you can see the numbers would be there. And then I was still working and, still accumulating my own research, publishing, doing very well academically. And then after a little more than a decade, left that job and went to Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, where I founded the Department of Social Work in the world's first bone marrow transplant center. And at that time, all of the patients were children, and half of them died. It was like, okay, God. I mean, again, I was asked to apply for this job. It's like, okay, we're going to roll up our sleeves now, aren't we? Then I had kids. And then along came Dr. Melvin Morse. Before then, actually, I was still at Harborview when he found me. Children's study at Children's Hospital. I had the kids there. And still doing Seattle IANDS. And it just, the pell-mell of it has not changed. Um, I I love when the mail comes from the University of Washington because I I got out of I retired basically from the University of Washington as I thought I was an assistant professor, but then I got promoted to associate professor. So I get to say I retired as an associate professor at the University of Washington in the School of Social Work, where I also taught death and dying in the School of Medicine for 20 years. That's a long time. So I mention all this because my credentials now involve, after my name, Kimberly Clark Sharp. By the way, I did not marry Robert Clark, did I? I married my husband, also in the 80s, Don Sharp, who was already a paramedic in Seattle, where 911 was invented, and he supervised Seattle's Medic 1 and then Seattle's Medic 2, which is citizen CPR, for 17 years. So, interesting choice. Um, I still am Kimberly Clark Sharp. I still want my monogram on the towels, but okay, we add an S. But it went on like that, and it continues on like this. I've been graced, privileged. I work hard, but it's it's helped so many people, and sometimes I wonder why I'm still alive because I know I've helped people because I've been alive this long, and but I don't want to die. And I want to make that clear to the listening public on your show. I don't want to die. The woman who would not die, I meant it. I want to live. Not that I'm afraid of death, because I'm so not. It's still homey home. But I want to find out, so what happens with Downton Abbey? Who killed JFK? I mean, I have all these questions. And now, this is going to date this interview, but in a few days, I'm going to be a grandmother for the first time. So I'm not leaving now. So I have what's called FOMO, fear of missing out. That's why I want to live. I just don't want to miss out. I love to travel. I love my husband. I love our home. We've lived here for almost 40 years. Love my neighbors. I'm the block watch captain. I have a life that is demanding and can be stressful, but it's filled with love and support. And back to those initials after my name, which grew to then LCSW after the MSW, for licensed clinical social worker, a license I maintain to this day. And then all my academic background gives me a leg up, so to speak, on validating other people's near-death experiences with them, with their families, with their friends, with their pastor, with their doctor, whatever. It's just what I do. But I also have had a continuation of side effects. And I should be honest with that because, well, I did write that book. Visions continued. Um, I just began to live with them, crazy as it sounded. To this day, I just like, oh, um, I don't know why. There are occasions when I feel like I've needed to help someone who has died and is confused. And I can, and I do, and I have, and I will. But I don't seek it. I say, I'm not a medium. I'm not a psychic. I'm not a this. I'm not a that. And yet I am. But I'm not. I mean, I'm grounded. I can teach. I can communicate. I know my zip code. That's good. I can function in the world as a loving adult who still happens on occasion to communicate from the other side to people or see what we call an angel or see a dead person. I can't explain it. The whole collection of it, I just call the invisibilities. And when someone dies that I love, this isn't like an open invitation, but if someone dies that I love, I say remotely, telepathically, or in their face before they take their last breath, if you wish to visit me and it's okay with God, the welcome mat will be at the door and the light will be on in the window. So I do set that out, but it's got to be okay with God. That's the big filter. My human filters stink. I mean, it's not wouldn't trust myself at all, but I trust God.
If someone watching this video lives in the Seattle area, how can they contact you and how can they go to Seattle IANDS?
Seattle International Association for Near-Death Studies is actually a freestanding nonprofit organization, part of IANDS, but we're our own 501(c), and we're also a charity in the state of Washington. We're donation dependent. We don't charge for anything, but we do want your money because we have to pay the bills. But if you go to, again, the acronym for IANDS is IANDS. If you go to Seattle IANDS and do an internet search, you'll get to our email address, which is seattleiands@yahoo.com, or our website at seattleiands.org.
What about your book? People can read about your story, and where can they get your book?
Amazon, but the book is called After the Light. I just want to share that it was a real deal hardback at the time it was published with William Morrow and Company in New York City. And I need to add, there's some really scary parts, there's some sexy parts, there's some sad parts, and mainly there's some hilariously funny parts because I write exactly like I talk. Save yourself reading. You just read the book. But it's also about my husband. I'm a cancer survivor, lost, it's kind of sad. Anyway, I was pregnant when I had cancer. That pregnancy didn't last. But the book is dedicated to David Eugene Sharp, our son that didn't make it, uh, and all the unborn that never left the light of God. And that in the front of the book has brought so many people to my attention. So many women, especially. That's like a whole nother side of things. And in a published book by a publishing house, once one sells oneself to a book house, which I did, but it was, I mean, it was, I got a lot of money, but not that any's left. But one does not own the book any longer. William Morrow and Company owned the book. The sales department came up with the book title. I like it though. After the Light, that sticks a landing. It's okay. But my point is that what cannot be edited in any book is the acknowledgments and dedications. Those are, unless there's a real bad typo or misspelling, editors are hands off on that. And so that, what I just told you was never touched. It was there. When you open the book, boom, it's in your face. So, but the rest was massively edited, I got to tell you. I have 8 versions of that book. It started at 800 pages and some, and I hand wrote it. I didn't have a computer at that time. I got one, and I got some help, but I hand wrote that sucker. And then I had the God Squad. I'd stay up all night. I had a baby too. I had like a 7-year-old. She was a baby then, 6. Pardon me while I do the math. I had a little girl and a husband. Somehow it all worked. Neighbors took over, friends took over. I wrote the book, and I'm proud of it because I think it's good. And it has an epilogue now, and it's in its 4th printing.
Hi, I'm Janet Riley, and I'm the Executive Director of the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And I am thrilled to invite you to join us at our annual conference, August 27th to the 31st in Oak Brook, Illinois, just outside Chicago, where we will celebrate the 50th anniversary of the field of near-death studies. Join us for 4 inspiring days with more than 100 speakers, including the legendary Life After Life author Raymond Moody, University of Virginia Professor Emeritus Dr. Bruce Grayson, Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell of the Telepathy Tapes, the psychic lawyer Mark Anthony, and spiritual teacher Carolyn Mace, among others. You'll experience healing workshops, including meditation, Reiki, spiritual counseling, and our beloved bookstore with exclusive book signings, surrounded by others who share your interests and your experiences. Come make friends and become part of a warm, caring community that will beckon you to return. Every year, we welcome nearly 1,000 attendees and serve over 20,000 globally through educational resources and support groups. This warm, deeply connected community celebrates life and the life that follows. For nearly 50 years, IANDS has represented researchers who study near-death experiences and supported those who have had near-death experiences and experienced related phenomena. Our mission is to educate the world. Our hope is that by supporting research and people, and by communicating far and wide to reporters, podcasters, and through our website and social media, we can normalize discussions about death and the afterlife and help answer the very important question: what happens when we die? Our planet faces unprecedented challenges, and our conference offers a place to recharge, to be informed, to be healed and inspired. Register now at IANDS.org, that's IANDS.org, and become part of a gathering that informs, heals, and inspires. We hope to see you there.
This has been the A.J. Parr Spiritual Journalist Podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe.